The city was loud that evening, neon lights glowing against the smog-filled sky. Cars hummed, drones buzzed. People rushed past each other with tired eyes and hurried footsteps. In all that chaos, Alex sat in his tiny apartment, staring at the email that had just changed his life. Congratulations, you have been accepted into the Galactic Exchange Program as a host. He read the line 3 times, not because he was excited, but because he couldn't quite believe it. Hosting an alien wasn't something he had ever dreamed about. For him, the program wasn't about curiosity or adventure. It was about money. Rent in New Chicago had risen so high that a simple desk job couldn't keep him afloat anymore. The government promised that if you hosted an alien, they would pay half your rent. Half. That was the only reason he applied. Alex leaned back in his chair, the cheap wood creaking under his weight. An alien roommate, he muttered to himself. What's the worst that could happen? When the knock finally came 2 weeks later, his stomach twisted. He wasn't ready. He thought maybe it would be some bug-eyed monster with too many legs or a creature that smelled like sulfur. He pictured cold eyes, sharp teeth, and a voice that hissed. He even half worried that it might crawl on the walls or eat his furniture. But when the door opened, the sight standing before him was different. The figure was tall, elegant, almost human-shaped, but not quite. His skin shimmered silver under the hallway light like moonlight poured into flesh. His eyes were endless, like tiny galaxies swirling with colors Alex couldn't name. And his voice, when he spoke, was soft. It wasn't the growl Alex expected. It was smooth like rain tapping against glass. Greetings. I am Carol of Lumeris, the alien said, tilting his head slightly in what looked like a polite gesture. Alex blinked. His palms were sweaty and his heart raced. He tried to smile, but it came out awkward. Hey, I'm Alex. Welcome to, Earth. Well, to my apartment at least. Carol stepped inside, moving with quiet grace. There was no sound of heavy footsteps, just a faint hum of energy, as though the air itself bent around him. He extended his hand, not quite like a handshake, but close. Alex hesitated before taking it. The alien's touch was warm, almost comforting. But the moment their hands connected, Carol tilted his head again. Your pulse is fast. Are you frightened? Alex pulled his hand back quickly, forcing a laugh. Nah, just too much caffeine. The truth was he was scared. Scared of this unknown presence. Scared of living in the same room with someone from the stars. Scared of being seen, really seen, by someone who wasn't even human. Carol, however, didn't push further. He simply looked around the small apartment with curiosity. His gaze lingered on the dusty bookshelves, the flickering ceiling light, and the cracked paint on the walls. To Alex, this was just a cheap, worn-down place he could barely afford. But to Carol it seemed almost sacred. This is your home, Carol said softly, as if testing the word. It feels alive. Alex raised an eyebrow. Alive? It's just an apartment. But the alien didn't argue. He only nodded, his strange glowing eyes scanning every corner as if each scratch and mark carried a story worth remembering. That first evening, silence filled the space between them. Alex cooked instant noodles, the only food he had left before payday. Carol didn't eat. He simply absorbed the glow of the small lamp, skin shimmering faintly under its light. Watching that, Alex felt a mix of unease and fascination. Later that night, as Alex lay in bed staring at the ceiling, he heard Carol humming softly from the other room. It wasn't like any song he knew. No words, no rhythm, just flowing notes like wind through glass. It wasn't frightening, it was calming. And in that moment, Alex realized something he didn't expect. Maybe this wasn't just about rent anymore. Maybe his life was about to change in ways he couldn't imagine. For the first time in years, instead of worrying about bills, deadlines, and his empty life, Alex felt something stir inside his chest. Curiosity. Hope. Maybe even the tiniest spark of joy. He whispered into the darkness, almost to himself. Welcome home, Carol. The first week was awkward. Alex had lived alone for years, and suddenly there was something sharing his space. He didn't know whether to treat Carol like a guest, a roommate, or a fragile experiment. He avoided eye contact, spoke in short sentences, and kept waiting for something strange or dangerous to happen. But Carol was not dangerous. If anything, he was gentle. In the mornings, Alex would stumble out of his room, hair messy, eyes half shut, reaching for the coffee machine. And every time he found Carol already awake, standing by the window, skin glowing faintly as the sunlight poured through. He didn't eat breakfast. He didn't need it. The light itself was his food, and as he absorbed it, his silver skin shimmered like water. At first, Alex found it unnerving. Watching a roommate literally drink the sun was not exactly normal. But after a while, he began to find it oddly peaceful. Like living with a piece of the sky, Carol was curious about everything. He would crouch beside the coffee machine, eyes glowing, and ask, "Why do you burn beans in water to wake yourself?" Alex laughed the first time. "Because without it, I feel dead." Carol tilted his head as if seriously considering the answer, then said softly, "Strange. You consume bitterness to escape emptiness." It was the kind of sentence that stuck in Alex's mind long after. Evenings were different too. When Alex returned from work, tired, shoulders heavy, heart empty from a job he hated, Carol always asked the same question. "Did today bring you joy?" At first, Alex brushed it off. He'd shrug, mutter something like, "Yeah, it was fine," and collapse on the couch. But Carol would keep looking at him with those deep, star-filled eyes waiting for the truth. Eventually, Alex admitted, "No, it didn't." Carol never judged. He simply nodded, as though understanding something deeper than words. Then instead of advice or pity, he'd hum softly, a strange melody, alien and beautiful. And somehow the weight on Alex's chest would feel a little lighter. Bit by bit, Alex stopped avoiding him. He started showing Carol little things: how to boil pasta, how to flip channels on the TV, how to work the old radio in the kitchen. Carol was terrible at cooking. The first time he tried to make pasta, he forgot to add water to the pot. The noodles caught fire and the smoke alarm screamed. Alex laughed so hard his stomach hurt, while Carol just stood there glowing faintly and said with quiet dignity, "This process is inefficient." But Carol was patient. He learned quickly. And in return, he taught Alex something Alex hadn't realized he was missing: silence. Not the heavy, lonely silence of being alone in a dark apartment, but a quiet space filled with presence. Carol never interrupted. He didn't rush to fill every pause. When Alex spoke, Carol listened, really listened, with his whole being, as if every word mattered. One night, Alex found Carol on the balcony, staring at the stars. His silver skin glowed faintly in the dark, and his eyes seemed to reach far beyond Earth. "Back home," Carol whispered, almost as if to himself. "We are taught that humans are restless, that you destroy what you touch, that you are broken." Alex froze, unsure how to respond. He'd heard humans described like that before, by other humans. Maybe it was true. Maybe they were broken. "And what do you think now?" Alex asked quietly. Carol turned his galaxy-filled eyes toward him. "I think you are complicated. You carry pain and joy in the same heart, and yet you share kindness even when you are drowning. That is not broken, that is beautiful." The words struck Alex deeper than he expected. He wasn't used to compliments. Most of his life had been measured by what he lacked: money, success, love. But here was an alien seeing him as something beautiful. For the first time in years, Alex didn't feel invisible. That night lying in bed, Alex realized that Carol wasn't just another mouth in the apartment or some alien guest he had to tolerate. Carol was changing things, quietly, gently, piece by piece. And as much as Alex hated to admit it, he was beginning to look forward to tomorrow. Because tomorrow, someone would be there, someone who asked, "Did today bring you joy?" And meant it. Days turned into weeks, and what began as quiet cohabitation slowly grew into something warmer. Alex had thought of Carol as a guest at first, then as a roommate. But somewhere along the way, the alien stopped feeling like a stranger. He became a presence Alex looked forward to. They fell into rhythm. Alex would come home tired from work, toss his bag onto the floor, and find Carol waiting with questions. Not annoying questions, but ones that cut straight into the heart of things. "Did you laugh today?" Or did someone speak your name with kindness? At first, Alex rolled his eyes. But the strange thing was, no one else had ever cared enough to ask. One rainy evening, Alex decided to cook real food instead of just heating instant noodles. He pulled out pasta and sauce and tried to explain the basics. Boil the water first. Then you put the pasta in. Don't forget the salt. Carol leaned in close, silver skin reflecting the dim kitchen light, eyes focused as if this simple act was a sacred ritual. He tried it himself, carefully pouring the pasta into the pot. But Carol didn't measure. He dumped the entire box in, and within minutes the water spilled over. The stove hissed, steam filled the room, and Alex doubled over laughing. Carol's glowing cheeks dimmed. "I have failed." "No," Alex said between laughs. "You just made enough for the entire building." Something shifted that night. Carol laughed too, a sound Alex had never heard before. Not quite human, not quite alien, but full of light, and Alex realized he wanted to hear that sound again. Later, Carol began teaching Alex small things in return. He showed him how to slow his breathing, how to listen without planning what to say next. One night they sat on the floor with the lights off, only the hum of the city outside. Carol said softly, "On my world, silence is sacred. We sit together not to speak but to exist. Would you try?" Alex nodded. At first the quiet was awkward. His mind spun with thoughts about bills, work, and the awkward fact that he was sitting cross-legged beside a glowing alien. But then slowly the noise inside him softened. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt safe. He found himself breathing easier, his shoulders loosening. For the first time in years, silence wasn't loneliness. It was connection. One night, Alex walked onto the balcony and found Carol staring at the stars again. His silver skin shimmered faintly under the moonlight, and his eyes glowed like tiny galaxies. Alex leaned against the railing, arms crossed. "Homesick?" he asked. Carol hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but it is strange. I look at the stars and think, I am exactly where I should be." Alex turned his head, startled by the honesty in Carol's voice. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city stretched below them, loud and restless, but on that balcony, it felt like a different world. Finally, Carol spoke again. "Back home, we are taught that humans are dangerous, impulsive, that you destroy what you cannot control. I believed it once." His voice softened. "But then I came here. I met you." Alex swallowed hard, not sure how to respond. He wanted to laugh it off, make a joke about being the world's worst representative of humanity. But the look in Carol's eyes stopped him. It was not pity, not curiosity. It was something deeper, something that saw straight through him. "Why are you kind to me?" Carol asked suddenly. "You are tired. Your life is heavy, yet you share space, food, time. Why?" Alex looked down at his hands. For a long moment he didn't answer. Then in a quiet voice he said, "Because I know what it feels like to need it." The silence that followed was not empty. It was heavy, charged, alive. Carol's eyes glowed faintly brighter, and Alex felt his chest tighten in a way he couldn't name. That night as he lay in bed, Alex couldn't stop thinking about it. About the way Carol listened. About the way his presence filled the apartment with something more than light. About how, for the first time in so long, Alex didn't feel invisible. And in the quiet darkness, Alex admitted a truth to himself he wasn't ready to say aloud. He didn't just want Carol in his apartment. He wanted him in his life. The bond between Alex and Carol had grown strong. Days were lighter, evenings softer, and silence no longer felt like loneliness. Alex had almost forgotten that their arrangement wasn't forever. He had begun to imagine Carol as part of his future, not just his present, but reality returned in the form of a message. It was late evening when the signal came. A sharp chime echoed from the small silver device Carol had kept hidden in his room since the first day. Alex had never seen it glow before, but now it pulsed with cold blue light. Carol froze the moment he heard it. Alex looked up from the couch. "What's that?" Carol didn't answer right away. His silver hands trembled as he touched the device. A soft hum filled the room, and then a voice, alien, formal, distant, spoke through it. Alex couldn't understand the words, but he didn't need to. He saw Carol's face dim as the message played. When it ended, the silence was heavier than any Alex had ever known. Carol placed the device on the table, his eyes dim, his shoulders bowed. "They want me back," Carol said finally, his voice soft, almost broken. Alex sat up straighter. Back where?" "To Lumeris. To my homeworld." Carol's gaze stayed fixed on the floor. "The Galactic Exchange has been compromised. They believe we are forming bonds too quickly with your kind. They say it is dangerous." Alex's heart thudded painfully. He forced a laugh, though it sounded hollow. "Dangerous? You've been here eating spaghetti and burning pots. That's not exactly world domination." But Carol didn't smile. His galaxy eyes were clouded, dimmer than Alex had ever seen. "They think I have changed." That I am losing who I was. They call it contamination. The word hit Alex like a punch, contamination. As if being with him, being with humans, was a disease. He clenched his fists. That's not fair. You're not contaminated, you're more alive here than anyone I know. Carol looked up at him then, and the sorrow in his eyes cut deep. I do not want to leave, Alex, but they are my people. My family, if I refuse. His voice trailed off, heavy with fear and duty. Alex felt something burning in his chest, anger, sadness, desperation, all tangled together. He wanted to shout, to beg, to hold on to Carol and never let him go. But all he managed was a broken whisper. When? 3 days, Carol said. The words hung in the air like a countdown to heartbreak. That night, Alex couldn't sleep. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to Carol's faint humming from the other room. Usually the sound calmed him, but now it only reminded him of what he was about to lose. Every laugh they'd shared, every moment of quiet comfort, every small piece of life they had built together, it was all slipping away. The next morning, the apartment felt different. The sunlight didn't seem as bright. Even the coffee tasted bitterer than usual. Alex tried to act normal, but Carol's silence was heavier than words. At work, Alex couldn't focus. His mind replayed their nights on the balcony, the way Carol's eyes glowed when he listened, the way he asked, "Did today bring you joy?" He thought about how for the first time in years he had started answering yes. And now, just like that, it was being taken away. When he returned home that evening, Carol was sitting at the table, staring at the small silver device again. His posture was rigid, but his face looked fragile, like glass about to crack. "I don't want you to go," Alex said suddenly, the words spilling out before he could stop them. Carol turned slowly, eyes glowing faint but steady. "And I do not want to go. But my people, they will not understand. They believe connection with humans will weaken us, that it will break what makes us Lumerian." Alex stepped closer, his chest tight. "They're wrong. You're not weaker here. You're stronger. You've made me stronger too." His voice broke, raw and unguarded. "You can't just leave, not now. Not after everything." Carol's gaze softened. For a moment it looked like he might say something important, something final. But instead he lowered his head, whispering only, "I am afraid, Alex, afraid of losing them. And afraid of losing this." The words hung between them, fragile and unspoken. This, whatever this was. And in that moment, Alex realized something with terrifying clarity. He wasn't just afraid of losing a roommate. He was afraid of losing the one person who had made him feel alive again. 3 days. That was all they had left. The countdown weighed on Alex like chains. 3 days, then 2, then 1. Every tick of the clock pressed heavier against his chest. He found himself watching Carol constantly, memorizing the curve of his silver skin, the way light shimmered faintly along his cheekbones, the gentle glow in his galaxy eyes. He wanted to carve every detail into memory because soon it would be all he had left. On the last evening, Alex couldn't bring himself to eat. The smell of pasta filled the apartment, but his stomach twisted with dread. Carol ate nothing, as always, but he sat at the table across from Alex, his fingers lightly tracing the wood. He looked calm, but Alex could see it. The sorrow in the dim glow of his skin, the heaviness in his posture. After dinner, Carol disappeared into his room. Alex sat on the couch in silence, staring at the shadows on the wall. The apartment felt different already, like it was preparing to be empty again. He hated it. He hated the silence, the helplessness, the fact that something so important was being ripped away from him. By midnight, he couldn't take it anymore. He stood, walked down the short hallway, and found Carol sitting in the dark. No lamps, no light, just the faint shimmer of his silver body glowing softly against the blackness. He was humming again, a low, strange tune that sounded like sorrow woven into sound. Alex's throat tightened. He stepped into the room. "You're not sleeping?" Carol's eyes opened, faint galaxies shining, and Alex swallowed hard. He wanted to say so many things, but the words stuck in his chest. His heart pounded. He stood there, fists clenching and unclenching, until finally the pressure inside him broke. "I don't want you to go." His voice cracked, raw and desperate. "I can't pretend I'm fine with this. You've changed my life, Carol. Before you, I was just surviving. Every day felt the same, gray, empty, meaningless. And then you came, and suddenly there was light. You made me feel like I mattered. You made me feel seen. The words spilled out in a rush, unstoppable. His chest burned as if he'd been holding them in for far too long. He took a shaky breath and whispered, "You're not just my roommate. You're more. I don't even know how to say it right. But the truth is, if you leave tomorrow, it's going to break me. The dark. Sleep avoids me tonight." The silence that followed was unbearable. Alex stared at the floor, his heart hammering, afraid he had ruined everything. Afraid that Carol would reject him or worse, say nothing at all. But then slowly Carol stood. He moved closer, the faint glow of his body casting soft light over Alex's face. When he spoke, his voice trembled, not with fear, but with something deeper. "Alex," he whispered, "do you know what you have given me?" Alex looked up, eyes wet. "What?" Carol's gaze was steady, glowing with emotion. "On my world, we are told emotions are dangerous. That attachment is weakness. I believed it until I lived here with you. You taught me how to share meals even when I do not need them. You taught me how to laugh even when I did not understand the joke. You taught me silence could be safe and that words could be kind. But most of all," his voice grew softer, filled with light, "you taught me what love is." Alex's breath caught. For a moment he couldn't move, couldn't speak. His heart pounded so loudly he thought it might burst. Carol reached out then, hesitantly, almost shyly. His silver hand brushed against Alex's. It was warm, real, alive. "Love," Carol said again, as if tasting the word for the first time. "It is not contamination. It is not weakness, it is everything." Alex's vision blurred. He let out a shaky laugh that was half a sob. "God, Carol, you're going to ruin me." But when Carol leaned closer, their foreheads almost touching, Alex realized something. He wasn't ruined at all. For the first time in years, he was whole. That night, they didn't speak much more. Words weren't needed. They sat together in the dark, holding on to each other as if their closeness could slow the ticking clock. Tomorrow, the world might tear them apart. But tonight, for this one fragile moment, they had love, and that was enough. Morning arrived too quickly. The sky outside the apartment was gray, heavy with clouds. Alex hadn't slept at all. He sat on the edge of his bed, head in his hands, stomach twisted into knots. Today was the day. Today Carol was supposed to leave. The apartment was silent. Even Carol's usual soft humming was gone. Alex stepped into the living room and found him standing by the window, silver skin glowing faintly in the weak sunlight. He looked calm, but Alex could see the tension in his shoulders, the sadness in his galaxy eyes. Neither spoke at first. Words felt too small for what hung between them. Finally, Carol said softly, "The shuttle comes at noon." Alex's throat tightened. He wanted to scream, to beg, to fight the universe itself. But instead he nodded, because what else could he do? His chest ached as if every breath cost too much. The hours crawled by. Alex busied himself by pacing the apartment, pretending to look for things that weren't there, pretending he wasn't breaking inside. Carol sat silently, his hands folded, his eyes distant, as if he were already halfway gone. When noon came, the sound of engines shook the air. Outside the balcony, a sleek silver shuttle descended from the clouds, its surface shimmering like liquid metal. Alex's heart sank. This was it. Carol stood slow and deliberate. He turned to Alex, his eyes soft. "Thank you. For everything." Alex shook his head, his voice raw. "Don't thank me. Just don't go, please." Carol's gaze wavered, pain flashing across his face. But he said nothing. Instead, he reached for the door. The walk to the shuttle felt like a funeral march. The city street was quiet, sealed off by officials in dark uniforms. The shuttle hovered just above the ground, its ramp lowered. A group of alien figures waited at the base, their silver forms glowing brighter, more rigid than Carol's softer light. One of them stepped forward, voice sharp. "Carol of Lumeris, you have completed your assignment. Return with us now." Carol froze at the edge of the ramp. Alex stood a few steps behind, fists clenched so tight his nails dug into his palms. His chest felt hollow, but his eyes never left Carol. For a long moment, the world held its breath. Then Carol turned not to his people, but to Alex. His voice trembled. "If I go back, I lose this. I lose you." Alex's heart pounded. "Then don't." His voice cracked, filled with desperation. "You don't have to. You don't belong to them anymore. You belong here, with me." The officials hissed in protest, their glowing forms flaring brighter. "This is unacceptable. You are contaminated. You will obey," but Carol didn't move. His eyes locked onto Alex's, full of light and fear and something far stronger than either. Slowly he reached out his hand, not to the officials but to Alex. "I will not go back," he said, his voice clear now, strong. "If I must choose between who I was and who I have become, I choose this. I choose us." Gasps rippled through the officials. Their glow flared dangerously bright like fire about to consume. "Carol, you betray your kind!" Carol's grip tightened around Alex's hand. "No," he said firmly. "I honor what I have learned. Love is not betrayal. It is truth." The air was tense, charged, as though the sky itself waited for the outcome. For a terrifying moment, Alex thought they might drag Carol away by force. But then slowly the officials dimmed their light. One by one they turned back to the shuttle. Their leader's voice was cold. "Then you are no longer one of us." With that they boarded. The shuttle lifted silently, rising into the clouds until it was nothing but a glimmer. And then it was gone. Silence filled the street. Alex could hardly breathe. His hand was still in Carol's, warm and real. Slowly he turned. You stayed." Carol looked at him, eyes glowing brighter than ever. "I stayed because you showed me who I am. Not what they told me to be, but who I chose to become. And I chose you." Alex's vision blurred. He laughed, half sobbing, pulling Carol into an embrace. For a moment, silver light and human warmth merged together. Two worlds colliding not with violence but with love. For the first time, Alex didn't feel like he was losing something. For the first time, he felt like he had won everything. Life did not magically become easy after that day. The world was not kind to things it didn't understand. People stared when Alex and Carol walked down the street together. Some whispered. Some pointed. A few shouted ugly words. Others snapped pictures as if they were a spectacle. Not two souls simply trying to live, but none of it mattered. Not really. Because every evening when Alex came home from work, Carol was there. And every night when they sat together in the soft glow of their apartment, the outside noise faded away. The world might not understand, but within those four walls they had peace. It took time for Alex to adjust. He had lived so long expecting disappointment that sometimes he woke up afraid Carol would be gone, as if the whole thing had been a dream. But then he'd hear Carol's soft humming in the kitchen, or feel the warmth of his silver hand on his shoulder. And he would remember. It was real. It was theirs. Carol, too, was changing. His glow was softer now, warmer, as if Earth itself had seeped into him. He learned to eat not because he needed food, but because he wanted to share meals with Alex. His first attempt at pizza was clumsy, sauce dripping everywhere. But the way he laughed through the mess made Alex's chest ache with joy. They built routines together. Mornings with coffee and sunlight. Evenings with cooking, laughter, or quiet balcony talks under the stars. On weekends they explored the city. Bookstores, museums, even noisy markets where Carol's shimmering skin drew curious glances. At first, Alex worried the stares would hurt him, but Carol only smiled. They look because they do not yet understand. In time they will see what you have already seen. And Alex did see. Every day, more clearly. He saw how Carol listened without judgment, how he treated each moment as sacred, how he carried sorrow yet still chose joy. Alex realized something simple but profound. He had spent years thinking life was just about surviving. But with Carol, life was about living. One night, as they sat together on the balcony, Alex leaned against Carol's shoulder. The city glowed beneath them, restless and alive, but up there time felt slower. Carol's voice was soft when he asked his familiar question, "Did today bring you joy?" Alex smiled. It had become their ritual. A question that once hurt now healed. "Yes," he said, his voice steady. "Because you're here." Carol's galaxy eyes glowed brighter, reflecting the stars above. He whispered back, almost like a vow, "Then I will always be here." Years passed, but the promise never broke. People grew used to seeing them together. At first, they were gossip. Then they were news. Eventually, they became something else, a symbol. Proof that humans and aliens could not just coexist, but love. Proof that connection was not contamination, it was hope. Alex never asked for that. He didn't care about being a symbol. All he cared about was the way Carol's laughter filled the apartment. The way his presence turned silence into comfort. The way his hand fit perfectly into his own. The world outside kept rushing, kept changing, But for Alex, the greatest change had already happened. He wasn't invisible anymore. He wasn't just surviving. He was loved. Truly, deeply, endlessly loved. On a quiet evening many years later, Alex sat on the balcony again, older now, lines on his face, hair touched with gray. Carol hadn't aged in the same way. His silver skin still glowed, his galaxy eyes still shone. Yet when he looked at Alex, there was no fear of time. Only devotion, Carol asked softly, as he always had. "Did today bring you joy?" And Alex, with tears in his eyes and a smile on his face, answered the truth he had always known since that first day they held hands against the universe.